Kids love playhouses. They're a place to use their imagination and creativity to explore, play and learn. I'm going to show you how to build one, easy as. Now the playhouse we are building has an overall height of 1915 mils and a footprint of 2.4 by roughly 1.6 metres. The reason I say roughly is because I'm using rough sawn timber, so the exact width and depth of each piece may vary by a few millimetres. I'm using fencing materials, palings, rails and posts because they're durable in the outdoors and really cost effective also. Another great thing, the way this is built is pretty much flat pack, so you can take it apart and reconstruct it in a different location if needed. To help you complete this build, download our written guide. It has all the materials, general dimensions and cutting lists that you'll need. Now just before you crack into it, make sure you're going to build this on a nice flat level surface. Now the dimensions of my playhouse is 2.4 metres long, and to keep it nice and simple, what I'm going to do is just have exactly 10 boards wide. Now like I said, we are using rough sawn timber, so these boards can vary quite a bit in width. So what I'm going to do is just measure the overall width with them nice and tight. My measurement is 1585 millimetres wide. So I can now start making the frame to take my flooring. I'll need 2 boundary joists at 2.4 metres and the overall width of my floor is 1585. Yours may be slightly different depending on the widths of your floorboards. My internal joist will sit between the boundary joists and I'll have 5 of them at 600mm centres. I'll start by cutting my boundary joist to length. Okay, so I've just got my 2 outside rails clamped together. Now what I'm going to do is start marking these out for 600 centres for our joists to go in between. So we're going to go 600mm to the centre of our joists. So our joist is approximately 50mm wide, so I'm going to go 625 and then I'm going to put a cross on that side, which will indicate exactly where our joist is going to sit. Then just continue to mark out the remaining at 600mm centres. Now, our overall width of our building is 1585mm wide, so just need to work out the actual length of our joists. So if we put our 1585 on the outside of our boundary joist there, that gives us a joist length of 1480. So I need to cut 5 joists at 1480. Okay, all my joists are cut. Now I'm just going to start placing them in between on our marks. We'll just sit them in there nicely. Then I'll start by fixing the 2 outside joists in place. I'm using 100mm bugle screws, but you could use galvanised framing nails if you like. Then measure your diagonals to make sure the frame is square. Both measurements should be the same, if not, adjust as needed. Now what we can do is come back and screw in our last 3 joists. Then lie the frame on 100 by 100 bearers and position it at 200mm in from the outer edges and fix it to these bearers through the joists. Okay, now it's time to start laying the flooring. So I'm just going to put our first board flush with our edges. Then fix them to the frame with 2 screws on either end, staggering the joins as you go. And then we can move on to making our frames. For our back wall, we've got a top and bottom plate at 1585, an overall height of 1.4 metres and 4 studs at 1.3 metres. There's a window with a 900 by 350 opening, a jack stud at 645 and a 200mm long nog above. Okay, I've just clamped my 2 top and bottom plates together and I've marked the centre, and so from that I'm going to come 450mm and then I'm going to measure the 900mm there, indicating the window space. And let's square those marks across. So we're just going to clearly indicate exactly where our studs go, same on this side here. Then, just like we did for the floor, open these up and fix the studs in position. So I've just cut myself 2 windowsill plates to 900mm and I'm just going to mark out on our 2 studs here where they sit. So my first measurement, 750mm, that will be to the top of our sill plate, and 1100 will be to the bottom of the top one. So we'll just do the same on that side. Position the plates on our marks and fix them in place. Then add our jack stud and nog. The truss is made from 2 pieces of framing at 974mm long with a 34-degree mitre at the top and a 55-degree angle on the ends. Then we've got a truss brace made from 2 lengths at 405mm, 90 degrees on the top and also with a 34-degree angle on the ends. I'll start by cutting the top pieces to length. What I'm going to do is move this around to 55 degrees, cut this angle first. Okay, now let's measure from our long point, 974mm. And I always put a mark as to the way I want the angle to go just to remind myself. So we're going to now move our blade around to 34 degrees. And I'll cut 2 lengths like this. So I've allowed these to come 25mm past, and then I'll fix that on. And I'll do the same on the other side. And then we'll just come to the middle and screw that off. And then fix the 2 truss braces in the centre. And that's our back wall done. Okay, I'm just about ready to start putting on my weatherboards. Now, just before I do that, what I've done is made myself up a story rod, basically a piece of timber with a whole lot of marks on it, and it indicates exactly where our weatherboards go on the house. So what I have done is marked 125 increments on here. We've got a 150mm wide board, and I'm allowing a 25mm overlap. So if I get the story rod that's flush with our bottom plate, and transfer these measurements to both sides of our frame, indicating the top of each weatherboard. Now our first board at the moment is sitting flat, so all I'm going to do for now is just kick that out on an angle and screw it in as if there was another board underneath it. So sitting on my pencil marks, I'll fix it down on both ends. Then screw the next board on, but make sure do not drive the screw through the board below, because we don't want the board splitting when it expands and contracts. Then just work your way up. Now just about to put my board on that overlaps our window here, put it on our pencil marks, and I'm actually still going to fix this in place, and I'm going to cut it in situ. If I screw down either side and take my pencil and square and just mark the edge of that window, and I'm just going to use my square and butt that in to where it hits the window sill plate underneath. Fix that off, and we're going to cut this piece off. So I'll rule the line across and cut it out using my jigsaw. Then just continue laying the boards on, cutting shorter ones for around the window opening. Next, come back and rule a line in the centre down the nog and jackstart and fix the weatherboards to them. When you get to the trusses, lay a board down, mark a line underneath and cut it to fit. Do the same for the other side and work your way up. Okay, so that's my last little board going on there. Now, let's not get too hung up if your line isn't perfectly straight, because once we stand this up, we're also going to have our roofing boards that are going to cover all of this and all our corner capping. I've just had a mate give me a hand lifting our wall into position, and I've used my trusty level to make sure that wall is sitting perfectly plumb, which it is, and I've attached a temporary brace on here just to hold it in situ. So I'm nice and flush on the edge, front and back on my framing, so all I have to do now is attach our 3 100mm bugle screws, one on either end and one in the middle. Now for the right wall. This is super simple. No window, just a top and bottom plate at 13mm long and 3 studs at 1.3 metres. One on either end and one in the centre. Now the difference is with these side walls is we're going to overhang the cladding 125mm, and the reason for that is because the thickness of all of that is 125 millimeters. So this is just going to slip over top of that on either side. So making sure I'm exactly 125, and we're just going to work our way up. Right, that's our right wall clad. So we'll stand it up and fix it to the back wall and the floor. Our left wall is similar to our back wall with a window in the centre. The top and bottom plates are the same length as the right wall at 1430mm, and we have 4 studs, a jack stud and a nog. When built, we'll fix it to the back wall and the floor. And finally, our front wall frame, which has a door and a window. The top and bottom plates are 1585 long. There are 4 studs, one on either end, one at 245mm to the outer edge of the stud, and one at 930mm to the inner edge, making our door space. Our windowsill plates are at 520mm long at the same height as the other 2 windows, and the truss is exactly the same as the truss on the back wall. So put it all together and fix on your cladding. The first weatherboard on either side here, I just ripped 25mm off the bottom of it because this sits on our decking here. And I've cut halfway through our bottom plate on either side. So once we lift this into place and we've screwed it all down, we'll then cut that doorway out. And with my window here, I've just cut a couple of packers here, 50mm wide, and I'm just going to slide that in underneath that weatherboard to support that, sit that one on top, throw a couple of screws in there, and all these are for is just packers for when we do build our window frame. That's just going to support it. So I'll fix those in, and then time to put the wall in. So we'll just slip that in, and what I'm going to use is my little cramp to hold that in place. Then fix the front wall to the side walls and the floor. The front wall's up, starting to look pretty good. So time to make our mid truss, which is pretty simple. So it's exactly the same length as our trusses that we made on the front and back frames. And then we've got a bottom cord that I've cut here, which is 550mm long, and that's on a 55-degree angle. So that'll just sit under there quite nicely. We've got a length of 335mm from our short point to our long point of that, the same on both sides. So first off, we'll screw that together, attach that, chuck it in. And we'll just bring this into situ, which is going to sit directly above our centre stud. Now I'm going to put 200mm bugles on either side, then it's time for our roof cladding. Starting at the apex, mark the 125mm increments all the way down on all 4 sides. Then set the first board on the marks, in line with the outside of the cladding on the back wall, and fix it on. Position the next board flush at the front and screw it on, missing the board behind and working your way up. Okay, so I've just cut my galvanised ridge cap to 1835, so it'll be flush at the front and the rest will be hanging just over the edge of our roofing boards here, which will cover the back part as well. So I'll fix it on with 3 screws on either side. Right, my playhouse is looking pretty sharp. Now, just to make it look even better, I'm going to put some fascia on the front here and a barge cap on the top. So I've cut 2 pieces of this 4x1, 1090 from our long point to our short point of 34 degrees, and which is exactly the same for that, 1090 from our long point to our short point. Now obviously this one's cut on the flat and this one's cut on the edge. And just to give it a little bit of a detail, I'm just going to overhang this one the thickness of my pencil because that's what I've got on hand, and I'm just going to make sure that that is flush on the end, and just using our 50mm screw we'll just fix that about every 300mm. Okay, so that's obviously my left-hand side. Now all I have to do is exactly the same with the angles going the other way for my right-hand side. Okay, so I've got my 2 pairs there. I'm just going to sit them, making sure I'm dead centre. Cramp them in position and fix them in place along the front and the sides. Time to start making up our corner boxes, which go on all 4 corners. Now these are pretty simple to make, just like our fascia barge combo. The only difference really is that I'm keeping this flush on the edges as opposed to having that little overhang like that. Now, once again, we got 34-degree angle on there and a 34-degree angle on there. So the dimensions that we've got here, from the square point to our long point, we got 1460, and from our square point to the long point of this one, we got 1410. Now this gets rebaited 30 millimeters up, 15 millimeters in, because obviously our weatherboard is hanging below this line here. So all we're going to do is slip that up, and then that rebates over. That's nice hard up against those weatherboards. So fix that in place, then make a mirror image for the right corner, and then we'll move on to the back corners. Pretty much exactly the same as what we did around the front. The only difference is we've got a slight kink in the top here, because that goes up and tucks underneath our top roofing there, and this one sits underneath our fascia. So the one that goes on the back is 1410 millimeters long from square to the long point, and the one that goes around the side is 1420 from square to the long point. Once again, we're square at the bottom, nice and flush, because we're in line with our weatherboards at the bottom. Then just fix them on. Time to start building our door. So what I've done is cut 4 pieces of our 150 by 25 to 1310 millimeters long. And the overall width I've got is 610 millimeters wide. So I've cut 3 ledges to that length, and I'll fix one in the center, one flush at the top, and one 45 millimeters up from the bottom. Scroll and cut the top and bottom angle for 2 braces and fix them on. Then I'll move on to the door jamb. The overall finished height is 1345, because from our floor to our header was 1350, so that's allowing 5 millimeters to get that in. So I've got my 2 sides at 1320. So my header, taking all that into consideration with the width of my jambs, is 1375. So all I've done is just screwed those straight in, 3 on either side. I'm going to put some facings on it as well. So I've taken some more of our 100 by 25. So I'll pre-drill and fix them to the door jamb, and then prep our door stop. And I'm just going to use a little bit more of this 100 by 25, and that's just going to sit hard down on the floor and stop the door from swinging all the way in. Okay, now we'll just put a couple of packers for the door to sit on. These are also 100 mils wide. Then I can move on to the hinges. For a nice look, I'll fix the 2 T-hinges onto some blocks, 250 mils long, 100 mil wide at one end, tapering down to 50 mils on the other. I'm just going to fix my hinges now to the side of my facing here, and we're about even, 5 mil by 5 mil, that's looking pretty sharp. The top hinge is about 10 mils down from the top of the door, and the bottom hinge will sit 135 mil up from the bottom. Then I'll cut a 3rd block to take the slide bolt and position that in the centre of the 2 hinges. Chop out the bottom plate in the door opening. Then I'll insert and fix in my door with 3 screws on either side and at the top. And the final touch for the door is a nice wee handle. Next up, the windows. All I've done is made myself up a square box and attached our facings on exactly the same as I did with my front door jamb. The only difference, I've obviously got a facing at the bottom here. So we had an internal size of 900 mil wide by 350 high. So what I've done is cut a top and a bottom at 890. That allows me 10 mil to get it in. And we've got a side piece here of 280. So the overall of that is 330 millimeters to get that in. And then I've just put my facings on, and all that's going to do is just slip straight in there. Fix it on, and then make another window frame exactly the same for the back window. Okay, we're just about there. Last little window to put in, just the same as the other ones. The only difference is we've only got facings going around 3 sides, because luckily we've got our door facing there, which will take care of this side here. So our height, internal size there, is 280, exactly the same as our back two. And we've got an overall length, top and bottom, of 470. So I've just screwed that together, put the facings on, and because our facing overlaps a little bit, this is just kind of tucked behind. Beautiful. Now we'll just throw in a couple of screws, just about there. And there we have it, a playhouse for the backyard and endless hours of wholesome fun. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mitre 10 YouTube channel for more handy content, or click here to watch more now.